In the second season, Makoto and Shiki are making their way to Rothgard when they stop in the town of Abbot. Makoto complains about how tiring walking is, but Shiki insists it's better than teleporting and risking the goddess finding them. Shiki asks Makoto to grab some food while he looks for a decent place to stay. Makoto doesn't mind staying anywhere, but Shiki refuses to settle for a cheap place, knowing Tomoe and Mio would disapprove. This makes Makoto wonder if it was a good idea to leave the demi-plane in their hands. Meanwhile, back at the demi-plane, Mio is practicing her cooking skills, hoping to impress Makoto. Tomo is relieved Mio didn't serve it to Makoto, but Mio is confused. It looked fine in his memories. Tomo asks if she's ever had rice curry before, and Mio admits she hasn't since it's a dish from another world. She wanted it to be a surprise, so she didn't ask Makoto for help. Emma notices something odd about the curry's green ingredient. When they tell her it's supposed to be a bell pepper, not mineral ore, Mio is shocked. She tastes the curry and finds it's fine, but Tomo reminds her that most people can't eat minerals like she can. Tomo tests her cooking skills by asking her to make toast, but Mio uses her flames and burns it to a crisp. Back to Abbot. Makoto tries blue meat for the first time and is surprised by its texture. The restaurant owner, noticing his reaction, teases him, but Makoto insists the taste is good. When Makoto guesses the meat comes from slime, the owner is impressed by his observation skills and assumes Makoto must be an experienced adventurer. The owner even asks him to take on a slime hunting quest, but Makoto explains he's just a merchant traveling to Rothgard. This catches the attention of the locals, who begin staring at him. Feeling uncomfortable, Makoto quickly pays with a gold coin and leaves. As he walks through the city, Makoto hears people mocking his appearance, which makes him regret taking off his mask. Still, he figures it's not as bad as the first time he visited a human town. At the guild, the receptionist is shocked that Makoto, a mere E-rank adventurer, has completed a special mission. Makoto notices the slime hunting quest posted but can't accept it since it's restricted to B-rank adventurers. While at the guild, Makoto overhears a girl pleading with the receptionist for help, saying the moon over the ruined castle is attacking. This catches his attention, as it's a phrase from a song he loved in his past. The receptionist tells her they don't have enough people to handle a bandit group of over 100 members. Frustrated, the girl questions why the goddess is allowing this to happen, despite the villagers' prayers. Some adventurers mock her, claiming prayers don't solve anything. Upset, the girl runs out in tears. Later, Makoto notices he's being followed. Using his kai, he senses that the same adventurers are harassing the girl and her companion. Makoto steps in and quickly defeats the attackers, sending some of them flying. When one pulls a knife, Makoto easily takes him down too. He uses his healing kai to treat the girl's injured companion, who turns out to be a werewolf named Ito. Surprised by Ito's small size, Makoto introduces himself, clarifying that despite his looks, he's human. The girl, Lana, explains that she's from Tapa village, where bandits have been terrorizing the people. They tortured the village's strongest soldier, Barkley, and killed his wife. The villagers are desperate and consider giving in to the bandits' demands, but Lana reveals that every village the bandits have raided has been massacred afterwards. Soon, Ito wakes up and apologizes for not being strong enough to protect the village. Makoto begins to understand the severity of their situation. Makoto offers to escort Lana and Ito to their village, but they warn him it's a long journey. Cool as ever, Makoto tells them not to worry and casually advises them not to bite their tongues as he grabs them and leaps effortlessly from tree to tree. In no time, they arrive at the village. Lana heads off to explain the situation to the villagers, leaving Makoto and Ito to chat. Makoto asks if Ito is part of the village, and Ito, surprised that Makoto speaks their language, explains that while Lana and a few others are kind to him, most villagers won't let a demi-human like him step foot inside. Curious, Makoto uses his investigative kai and discovers that bandits have attacked and injured some villagers. Ito is impressed, thinking Makoto must have a super sharp sense of smell like him. Makoto casually admits he knew Ito was faking unconsciousness earlier, likely because he felt too guilty to face Lana after putting her in danger. With a smile, Makoto advises Ito to protect Lana if he truly cares about her. Suddenly, Makoto senses something else and starts heading toward the mountains, much to Ito's alarm. Realizing Ito knows what's there, Makoto jokes about disliking bandits with terrible taste, using the name of his favorite song to drive the point home. Touched by Makoto's help, Ito asks how he can repay him. Makoto skillfully mentions his trading company, where many demi-humans work, and requests that if they ever visit the village, they be treated kindly. Meanwhile, over at the camp, Mio's cooking is causing absolute chaos. No one can stomach her food, and she's completely puzzled about what she's doing wrong. Tomo steps in with some wisdom, pointing out that great ingredients aren't enough since different spices have different tastes. This blows Mio's mind, and she never thought cooking could be so complicated. Tomo suggests using Lime, a human like Makoto, as a test subject, though she knows it'll be tough on him. To spare Lime from further torment, Tomo proposes Mio travel the world to sharpen her culinary skills. Mio agrees, and everyone secretly breathes a sigh of relief, thrilled to avoid more of her experimental dishes. Elsewhere, Makoto tracks down the bandits and dons his mask to keep his identity a secret. Using silencing Kai, he eliminates all sound, throwing the bandits into a panic. Taking advantage of their confusion, Makoto skillfully shoots arrows at them. When they try to counterattack, his armor easily deflects their efforts. Not wanting to waste arrows, Makoto unleashes a powerful fire arrow that knocks out the entire group in one swoop. One terrified bandit remains and begs for his life. Makoto spares him but orders him to rename their group as a parting gesture. Later, Makoto meets up with Shiki, who has found an expensive room costing 3 gold coins. Makoto balks at the price, but Shiki insists it's necessary, pointing out how well the Limia Kingdom and Gritonia Empire treat their heroes. Makoto recalls his battle with demons and wonders when he'll encounter the other heroes. In a flashback, we see Makoto in his previous life, meeting a girl named Hibiki. She can't understand how someone so average ended up in the archery club and envies how his life seems more exciting than her own. Suddenly, a white light transports her to another world, where a goddess asks her to become a hero. Tempted by the promise of adventure, Hibiki agrees and is granted incredible abilities, strength, and charisma. The goddess gives her a silver sash and sends her to Limia Kingdom, where she's welcomed as a hero to fight against the advancing demons. As time passes, Hibiki learns that the Limia and Gritonia kingdoms continue their desperate struggle. Although the two kingdoms are working together now, Hibiki realizes their alliance may crumble once the war ends. Reflecting on her mission, she calls on the wolf spirit within her sash and begins planning the team she'll need to recruit for the battles ahead. Are you enjoying the interesting story so far? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And now, back to the video. The next day, we learn that the king has already picked the court mage Woody and a knight named Verda. Soon after, we're introduced to Navel, the silver-haired ogre. She immediately sizes up Hibiki and declares her unfit for battle. Navel is ready to walk away, but Woody steps in to stop her. Hibiki, bold as ever, interrupts and asks Navel to be her teacher. At first, Navel isn't interested, but Hibiki doesn't back down. She promises that, as part of their team, Navel can fight on the front lines and take down demons. That finally convinces her. Hibiki's group is then tasked with escorting Chia, the priestess of Laurel. During their journey, they're ambushed by mana-eating monsters called kobolds. Chia seals herself with a magical barrier while the rest of the group dives into the fight. Hibiki, who's never killed before, freezes when one of the monsters begs for mercy. This moment of hesitation allows it to summon reinforcements, making things even harder. Guilt washes over Hibiki, but seeing her friend struggle gives her the courage to push through her fear. Inspired by her determination, the team works together and defeats the kobolds. After the battle, Chia insists on joining their party. The team hesitates, worried it could cause tension with Laurel. To prove her commitment, Chia dramatically cuts off her hair and demands to join, even threatening that her nation will blame the group if they refuse. Hibiki finds the gesture a bit over the top, but is impressed by Chia's resolve. Navel and Hibiki joke about cutting their own hair, but Chia waves them off, saying they're already strong enough without such gestures. Hibiki is so impressed with Chia's skills that she asks her to teach her magic. With Chia on her side, the group starts fighting demons. However, their toughest challenge comes when they face Mio in her terrifying spider form. Her skin is nearly indestructible, and none of their attacks work. Navel refuses to give up and manages to cut off one of Mio's legs, only to see it regenerate instantly. Navel is nearly eaten, but Hibiki steps in to save her and tells Chia to heal her. Despite their best efforts, Mio defeats everyone except Hibiki. In a desperate final move, Hibiki injures Mio's eye before collapsing. When she wakes up, she's relieved that no one died, though the loss still stings. She silently thanks Mio for the experience and promises herself that she'll win next time. Meanwhile, back in Makoto's old world, we meet Tomoki, a boy stuck in a miserable life. He dreams of escaping to another world and living out a superpower fantasy. One night, his dreams come true when the goddess appears before him. She asks for his help, granting him amazing abilities, powerful magic, a strong body, a charm-infused eye, flying shoes, and immortality at night. Unsatisfied with his appearance, Tomoki asks her to change it before sending him to Gritonia. In Gritonia, he's greeted by Princess Lily, who introduces him to Genia, a female knight. Tomoki, surprised to see a woman in armor, accidentally offends her. However, when he looks into her eyes, she blushes, charmed by his magic eye. Sensing something strange, Lily takes him to have his abilities checked and discovers how strong his charm really is. She quickly arranges for the royal family to be immune to it. Later, Tomoki meets Yukinatsu, an alchemist who creates golems. Fascinated, he unintentionally charms her, and she invites him to her room. Lily steps in and stops them just in time. While wandering the castle, Tomoki encounters Mora, a dragon summoner. He is amazed by her dragon and learns her village was destroyed by demons, which is why Lily took her in. Charmed by his eye, Mora boldly asks Tomo to marry her. That night, Tomoki tells Lily he wants to form a party with the three girls. Lily reassures him that they already like him, though she believes he hasn't fully mastered his charm. Tomoki starts to wonder if anyone truly likes him for who he is, not just his powers. Seeking reassurance, he asks Lily what she thought of him when they first met. She smiles and calls him a great hero, saying it's only natural for people to admire him. Comforted by her words, Tomoki realizes Lily is completely devoted to defeating the demons. Later, Lily explains the plan to Gritonia and Limia to join forces and attack Fort Stella. Tomoki is curious about Limia's hero, and Lily teases him that she's gorgeous. Tomoki reassures her that he's happy with Lily and has no interest in anyone else. Meanwhile, Navel and Hibiki discuss their own plans to fight the demons. Navel notices Hibiki is distracted and guesses she's thinking about Gritonia's hero. Hibiki admits she's curious since they're both from the same world and around the same age. When the two nations meet, Lily explains they've received reinforcements from the King of Ion, but less support from Laurel. Hibiki quietly suspects the strained relationship is due to Shia's rocky ties with her home nation. Lily confidently points out that even after their setback, they still have the numbers advantage over the demons. She's sure that once the goddess blesses them, they'll be unstoppable. Curious about their strategy, Hibiki asks why they're fighting at night. Oki explains they're used to it, but Hibiki notes that Limia isn't great in the dark. Oki takes a jab at Limia, questioning if they're even useful, but reassures her that this battle is like a mid-level boss fight. They'll easily win once the goddess steps in. As they talk, Hibiki wonders if they've met in a past life. Tomoki quickly denies it, but when Hibiki mentions her friend Amal, who shares his name, he snaps, insisting they're nothing alike. Hibiki realizes she touched a nerve and quickly apologizes. To lighten the mood, Tomoki asks about her level. When Hibiki says she's level 430, Tomoki smugly reveals he's over 600, clearly trying to one-up her, leaving Hibiki rolling her eyes. Later that night, Naval asks Hibiki why she came to this world in the first place. Hibiki opens up about her privileged life and how she craved real challenges. Naval struggles to believe this is the same person who couldn't take down a single kobold before. Hibiki smiles and reassures her. This time, she's not alone. She has friends by her side. As they prepare for battle, Tomoki asks for the goddess's blessing, while Rona, the demon commander, is alerted that the humans are closing in. The battle begins, but something feels off to Hibiki. The enemies are going down way too easily. Sensing danger, she quickly tells Shia and Woody to set up a barrier just in case. Her instincts are spot on. As they approach the fort's gate, Rona activates a trap, sending everyone plummeting into a hole. Luckily, Tomoki escapes using his flying shoes. When Rona attacks him with ice magic, he blocks it with his divine spear. Thanks to Yukinatsu's replica flying shoes, the rest of the party escapes too. Once they regroup, Tomoki has Mora summon her dragon, Nagi, which they ride straight into the fort. Inside, they're met by a demon commander. Without hesitation, Tomoki attacks, blowing off the demon's arm. However, the demon doesn't even flinch, and instead calls Tomoki rude for starting the fight without introducing himself. Realizing this fight won't be easy, Hibiki jumps in to help. She apologizes for Tomoki's brashness and politely introduces herself. The demon reveals he's Io, the demon giant, and shocks everyone by regenerating his arm instantly. Hibiki is stunned, comparing his regeneration ability to the black spiders. Io then removes the goddess's blessing from Hibiki and Tomoki, leaving them weakened. Tomoki panics, realizing he's no longer immortal. Tomoki urges the group to retreat, saying heroes can't afford to die here, but Hibiki refuses and boldly declares that someone who only cares about themselves isn't a true hero. Io, both amused and disappointed, gets ready to fight her alone. Standing firm, Hibiki declares she's not alone as her party arrives to back her up. Meanwhile, the goddess watches the fight and grows frustrated that her chosen heroes haven't managed to win, but her focus shifts when she senses Makoto's presence. Back in the battle, Hibiki and her party managed to hold their ground against Io until morning. However, reality hits Hibiki hard. She's just not strong enough to take him down. Rona checks in with Sophia, who assures her things are fine, but just then they notice the goddess's light as Makoto is summoned, giving the humans a glimmer of hope. Despite the boost in morale, Hibiki's team is barely holding on. Navel suggests using a magic device to hold Io back so the others can escape. Woody hesitates but eventually agrees, placing a talisman on her sword and hanging her to the rose sign. With that, the plan is set in motion. Navel steps up and lands a hit on Io, leaving Hibiki pretty surprised. She asks how Navel pulled it off, and Navel casually explains she's using a special catalyst. Vera, noticing a rose sign on Navel's neck, quickly figures out what's going on. Navel isn't done yet. She cuts off one of Io's hands, and he's stunned that the people here know spells he's never seen before. Navel is also a bit puzzled by the fact that they haven't taken down any demon commanders yet, but Io confidently claims he's the toughest demon on the battlefield. Next, Navel slashes at Io's neck, and now Io's impressed. He didn't think he'd have to go all out. He powers up into his second phase, and Navel calls for Woody, who teleports everyone else away. Hibiki tries to stop them, but Verta holds her back, explaining that the rose sign grants huge power, but it comes at the cost of the user's life. Io announces that he's going after Hibiki now since Navel won't be able to fight, but Navel isn't backing down. She's determined not to die without purpose and says she'll live on in her friend's memories. Io punches her, but Navarre stabs his hand and activates a spell that burns them both to dust. Meanwhile, Tomoki is wondering if he should have joined Hibiki in battle, but Lily reassures him that he made the right call. Back with Io, he's still alive, and Rona informs him about Sophia's defeat, guessing that the goddess must have summoned a real powerhouse to face her. On a different note, Miu plans to head to Port Town Kuran to grab some seaweed and help for dishes Makoto enjoys. Tomo also hears about a lake that appeared when Makoto fought Sophia, and she wants to check it out. Mio mentions they'll be gone for a while, but Tomo says that Makoto and Shiki are already in Rothgard, and once things settle, they'll return to the demiplane. In Rothgard, Shiki is amazed at all the shops and jokes about how competitive the business must be, but Makoto tells him to start gathering info, and soon they come across a girl surrounded by some guys. She tries to walk away, but one of the men pushes her. Makoto tells him to stop, but since he can't speak their language, they just ignore him. Makoto asks Shiki to handle it. Shiki tries to talk to them, but when they don't listen, Makoto thinks that Mio and Tomo would probably just deal with them. But since he's with Shiki, he figures there won't be too much trouble. Still, Shiki's clearly getting frustrated. The men demand to speak with the girl, but Shiki says they'll let them live if they leave, making Makoto realize that Shiki is purposely trying to start something. The men use wind magic to float, but Makoto wonders why they aren't attacking yet. Shiki uses earth magic to send them flying, but Makoto cancels the spell, thinking he's getting pretty good at countering magic now. Makoto tells the girl to run, but she says she didn't ask for his help. He reassures her that he doesn't want anything in return. She realizes he's not like the other guys and says she's a waitress at a nearby hot pot restaurant and promises to thank them properly if they visit. Shiki thinks the girl's being rude, but Makoto understands why she might be cautious. They notice the men were still floating, so Makoto asks Shiki to help again. Shiki finally drops them to the ground and thinks they shouldn't have gotten involved, but Makoto admits he wasn't just curious after seeing the girl's eyes. Makoto then tells Shiki that the academy entrance exam is in 3 days. Shiki's surprised Makoto plans to take it, but Makoto explains he needs to join the academy to get permission to open a store. Shiki mentions that Makoto isn't taking the new student test, but the teacher employment test, which totally surprises Makoto since he has no idea what that even means. The exam information Makoto received is sent by Mr. Rembrandt, which made him really happy, though he was anxious because he is already running late. When the exam day finally arrived, Shiki seems unsure if Makoto was feeling okay. Honestly, Makoto probably would have skipped the whole thing if it weren't for Mr. Rembrandt. As the exam begins, one of the supervisors explains the rules to Makoto. However, Makoto, knowing his skills are not suited for being a lecturer, casually asks if there were any other job openings. This question annoyed the supervisor, who thought Makoto was asking for special favors. Shiki, unable to hold back, cast a spell to drain all the energy out of the guy, which Makoto has to stop immediately. Just then, another supervisor walks in and apologizes on behalf of the rude supervisor, admitting he had crossed a line. Shiki accepted the apology but insists that some amendments be made. However, the new supervisor points out that bad-mouthing candidates is unacceptable in any situation, which doesn't sit well with Shiki. When the new examinee sees Makoto's CV, they are surprised by his qualifications and offer him options for the type of exam he'd like to take. They also notice he has a recommendation letter from Mr. Rembrandt's company, which surprises and confuses Makoto. Without hesitation, Shiki jumped in and decided that Makoto would take the practical-only exam at the highest difficulty level, an exam that only a handful of people could pass. Makoto, shocked and annoyed by Shiki's decision, couldn't believe it. After all, he is the one who has to take the exam. But hey, who cares what he thinks, right? The supervisor soon explains the rules of the game, and the most interesting part is that the route includes monsters, making it a survival game, something that immediately catches Makoto's attention. To win, participants need to collect yellow, blue, and green orbs within 3 days. This sounds simple enough to Makoto. Makoto is transported to his designated area, where he immediately spots a red orb. However, there's a catch. The orbs can only be captured if destroyed using a specific method, making things more challenging. Makoto tries several approaches, but every orb ends up being destroyed without being captured, which starts to make him panic. Meanwhile, another examinee leaves the area, possibly having completed their task, but that doesn't guarantee they've won. Frustrated, Makoto brainstorms and decides to use the lightest possible attack on the orb. Unfortunately, even this fails as the orb teleports away, leaving him even more exasperated. The first day ends with no progress, and Makoto feels hopeless. The next morning, Makoto wakes up to find a black-robed man attacking him with a poison knife. While Makoto manages to break the knife, the poison seeps into his skin, which embarrasses him. Despite this, he quickly casts a freezing spell on the attacker, surprising the man with his persistence, something rare among the other examinees. Makoto then strikes back and sends the man away. Afterward, Makoto finally figures out the correct way to damage the orbs. Using his newfound method, he successfully collects all 3 orbs. When he returns to the academy with them, everyone is stunned. Makoto is the first person ever to pass this exam, as all the other examinees had already quit. Makoto informs Shiki that he's been appointed as a temporary instructor, and Makoto, excited about the news, mentions wanting to visit the Gotetsu restaurant since there's some time before the next exam. Meanwhile, the examiner is spotted at a bar with a girl, sharing an interesting detail. No one was actually supposed to pass the exam because someone had requested the difficulty to be increased, yet Makoto managed to succeed, which the girl finds quite impressive. Before heading to the academy, Makoto decides to grab lunch first, realizing they've been eating at Gotetsu for 5 days straight. The girl they saved, Loria, is now working as a waitress and takes their order. She finds it amusing that, unlike most people who share a hot pot, Makoto and Shiki prefer ordering separate meals. Elsewhere, Ilumgand, one of the bullies, secretly watches them. He's approached by a girl from the academy who hands him a magical medicine meant to boost his physical and magical abilities. At the academy, Makoto gets a rundown of the rules for instructors. He learns he can promote his business but isn't allowed to exchange money on school grounds. Teachers earn 10 silver coins per student, and part-time instructors can teach up to 30 students. However, Makoto surprises the staff by announcing he plans to keep his class small, unlike most instructors who try to gather as many students as possible. Later, Bright, a full-time teacher, chats with Makoto about his teaching style. While Makoto plans to focus on practical skills, Bright reveals that his expertise is in theory but also includes combat techniques. He offers to send some of his students to Makoto's class if they're interested. Bright also mentions that this year's group of students is exceptional, with some able to cast floating spells and communicate telepathically. This makes Makoto curious, as he wonders if Bright might be talking about the boys he fought before. Then Makoto heads to the library to get ready for his lecture, hoping to find some books on magic incantations. A librarian approaches, offering her help, but things get weird when she casually calls him by name. Instantly on guard, Makoto throws up a barrier and jumps back. She compliments his quick reflexes, but he's more focused on figuring out who she is and how she knows him. She claims she knows every teacher's name, but with so many teachers at the academy, Makoto isn't convinced. She introduces herself as Eva and says she heard about him from her sister, Loria. Still, Makoto's not ready to drop his suspicions just yet. Meanwhile, Mia was having a blast learning how to cook with the girl. She's all smiles, but her intense knife skills are enough to freak the poor girl out. Over at the Rothgard Academy, the students are buzzing with doubts about whether Makoto is actually good enough to teach them. Makoto overhears their chatter, and it's obvious they don't respect him. Deciding enough is enough, he tells Shiki he's going to be strict and serious as a teacher. When class begins, the female students are all swooning over how handsome Shiki is, but Makoto doesn't exactly get the same treatment. He dives straight into his lesson, warning them it'll be tough. One student pipes up, saying his strength lies in swordsmanship, and Makoto realizes none of them can handle more than one element of magic. Channeling his inner Tomo, Makoto calls them out, saying they're on track to becoming third-rate magicians if they don't step up. The students argue that it's normal to stick to one element, but Makoto shuts that down, telling them they'll be in big trouble if their one trick fails in a real fight. He challenges them to aim higher and learn at least 3 elements. The students aren't convinced and challenge Makoto to prove himself. Cue the demonstration fight with Shiki. The students are blown away by Shiki's staff, packed with mana from different elements, but they notice they can't sense any mana from Makoto. The fight kicks off and Shiki attacks with fire magic, but it bounces right off Makoto's barrier like it's nothing. Shiki picks up the pace, his movements sharpened thanks to training with Tomo and Mio, but Makoto counters with a powerful fire blast that pushes Shiki back. Shiki fights back with earth magic, but Makoto one-ups him with a fire arrow that destroys his spell instantly. As things heat up, both Makoto and Shiki start chanting their incantations, which shocks the students. They didn't even know Makoto could chant, especially since he doesn't speak their language. The two clash with a massive explosion that even injures a student. When the dust settles, Shiki is down and Makoto stands victorious. He tells the students it's up to them whether they join his class, but promises they'll grow stronger if they do. Before leaving, Makoto asks Shiki to heal the injured student, who blushes when Shiki touches her, thinking he used some fancy, expensive treatment. Shiki just casually mentions it's the standard stuff from their shop. Meanwhile, Tomo checks out the aftermath of one of Makoto's battles. A whole lake has been created, and when she questions a witness, he insists Makoto fired a punishment arrow to destroy everything. After reading his memories, Tomo just laughs, thinking how life is never boring with her master. When Makoto's next class rolls around, 5 students show up. Shiki introduces them. Mithra Casper, a top student with connections to the temple. Diana Severus, a married guy with a wife on maternity leave. Abelia Hopleys, a determined young mage. Izumo Kusakabe, who's eager to learn magic, and Jin Rohan, a swordsman, which makes Makoto curious about why he's in a magic class. Makoto starts off with a question. What happens to your body when you run out of mana? The students answer confidently. Half of your mana gone means fatigue. Using all of it could make you faint or even vomit, and going over your limit, well, that's a straight-up death wish. Makoto's impressed, but ready to push them even harder. This is just the beginning. Makoto surprises everyone with a simple question during training. When asked why, he explains that he wants to test their battle limits. He warns them about potential injuries, but reassures them with enough mana and stamina recovering medicines for purchase. Makoto boldly challenges them to attack him all at once. Despite their combined efforts, most of the group is defeated in no time. Only Mithra and Jin hold on, but Mithra uses the last of his mana to heal Jin and collapses. Jin makes one final attempt to land a hit but fails, earning a lesson from Makoto about not attacking recklessly. After the session, Makoto encourages the group to know their limits and requests a detailed report on what they've learned. Later that night, Makoto chats with Shiki, noting the students have more potential than he initially thought. While he admits teaching isn't his forte, he's determined to give it his all. Meanwhile, the assassin hired by Bright is tasked with finishing the job against Makoto. Makoto opens a new shop in Rothgard and tries to transfer Iris and Aqua from his other store, but they're hesitant, worried it might upset Mio and Tomo. Makoto convinces them by pointing out that the new setup includes better hours, breaks, and fewer complaints from management. Sounds like a win-win, right? However, Makoto faces a new kind of challenge. Many female students keep proposing to him, thinking he's loaded. Looking at a picture of his parents, Makoto reflects on what a perfect marriage should look like. Eva catches him and learns how much he admires his parents. She explains that most of the students, being children of merchants, see marriage more as a business deal than about love. This makes Makoto appreciate Mio and Tomo even more, knowing they genuinely care for him. Meanwhile, Lime tells Tomo that someone fought the dragon Licia before the Battle of Fort Stellar. He asks about the ring that moves the goddess's blessing, but Tomo hasn't found anything yet. Their chat is interrupted when Lime realizes someone has been following him. A knock at the door reveals a group of travelers led by none other than Tomoki and his companions. Among them are Lily, the second princess of Gritonia, and Tomoki, their hero. While Lily explains they're here to study the lake, Tomoki gets distracted by Tomo's katana and insists on seeing it. Tomo allows him to hold it but warns that only she can use it. Tomoki fails to unsheath it, much to everyone's surprise, as he's supposed to be able to wield any weapon. Tomo effortlessly unsheaths the sword, stunning everyone. Lily tries to buy the katana, even pulling the "I'm a princess" card, but Tomo doesn't budge. It's clear they want to replicate the blade for weapons. Tomoki uses his magic eye to manipulate Lime into offering his sword, but when Tomoki turns his charm on Tomo, she's completely unaffected. Disappointed by Tomoki's behavior, Tomo declares her loyalty to Makoto. When Mio realizes Tomo's a dragon, she tries to control her, but Tomo easily cancels her spell and frees Lime from Tomoki's magic. Lime mocks Tomoe, calling him a goon, which enrages him. He attacks with a spear, but Tomo teleports them away using her mist. Before leaving, she warns them that if they act out again, she won't hesitate to kill Tomoki. Tomoki, frustrated that he can't charm Tomo, vows to find a way. Lime feels embarrassed for giving up his sword, but Tomo offers him a chance to become her servant. Grateful for the opportunity, Lime immediately agrees, determined never to feel powerless again. Elsewhere, Mio is busy collecting seaweed scraps when he's attacked by Hibiki's wolf spirit. Ready to strike back, she's stopped by Hibiki, who apologizes for her spirit's actions. Hibiki insists on helping, so Mio asks her to choose the best seagrass pieces. When Hibiki realizes Mio is talking about seaweed and kelp, Mio gets excited, showing off her expertise in distinguishing the two. It's a small but charming moment in her day. Later, Hibiki shares that she was traveling to Sige to buy weapons, but Mio's more interested in getting cooking tips from her. Meanwhile, Woody can't help but think about Hibiki's emotional scars, especially since she's been hiding her true feelings ever since Neville's death. Just then, Mio senses a creature nearby, and she wants to see if Hibiki's strong enough to handle it. When they face the creature, Hibiki asks Chia to put up a defensive barrier and tells Woody to support them. Verta charges in to attack, but his sword starts breaking. Mio doesn't think they're terrible, just poorly equipped, but Verta trying to fill Navarre's shoes attacks recklessly and ends up injuring himself. Seeing his blood, Hibiki freezes, remembering Navarre, and asks Mio for help. Mio, a little annoyed, says it's their fault for not knowing their limits, so she steps in and easily takes down the creature. She asks the group to help her gather materials from the monster, but just as they think it's over, the creature attacks Mio from behind. The attack tears Mio's kimono, making her absolutely furious because Makoto had praised her in it. In a burst of anger, she blows the creature up, leaving the party stunned. Suddenly, Mio knocks them all out, and Hibiki's wolf spirit appears. Mio realizes that the wolf recognizes her from their previous battle, but she assures it that she means no harm. Hibiki wakes up in her room with a letter from Mio inviting her to visit Makoto's shop. Once Hibiki's up, they head to the shop, where they meet Mio. Hibiki tells her she'll accept any criticism from the bow since she had to ask for help, but Mio just wants her to teach her how to cook. Woody mentions that they came to Sige to buy equipment and train in the wasteland, but Mio tells them they're not strong enough to survive there yet. Hibiki agrees they need to get stronger and asks Verta to make equipment, but in the meantime, Hibiki should help Mio with her cooking. Mio points out that new equipment won't guarantee their survival, and she can't learn to make broth in just 3 days, so Verta proposes sending Toa and her party to help them survive. Meanwhile, back in Rothgard, Shiki tells Makoto that Tomo wants him to come back to the demi-plane because she has loads of stuff to report. With the forest ogres taking care of the shop in their absence, Makoto's a little worried but decides to trust Shiki and returns to the demi-plane. When he arrives, he notices it's strangely hot, even though it's nighttime, and Shiki mentions the weather's been changing a lot lately. They go to Makoto's new house in the demi-plane, where everyone greets him. Mio serves him a dish that's so tasty it makes her really happy. Tomo reveals that Mio cooked most of the food, so Makoto praises her cooking skills, and Mio promises even more delicious food in the future. Mio leaves all excited. Emma tells Makoto that she's going to learn from an adventurer, and Tomo shares that she met the Gratonia Empire's hero during her investigation. Makoto wonders what he was like, but Tomo thinks he's pretty terrible. She mentions how Tomoki overestimates himself and is driven by his desires, making her think he could cause a war with our kingdoms after defeating the demons. Tomo also shares that she read the princess's mind and saw an image of a firearm. Shiki thinks Tomoki must have told them about it, but Makoto doesn't consider firearms as strong as magic. Tomo admits she thought about killing them, but decides to keep an eye on them for now. Meanwhile, Shiki has filled Tomo in on everything going on in Rothgard, so she teases Makoto about being so popular at the academy. Makoto's still wondering why it's so hot in the demi-plane, and Tomo thinks it's because of the mist gates he's been opening. She explains that the last place he opened a gate affects the demi-plane's weather, but Makoto's confused since it was cool at the academy. Shiki thinks the weather in the gate's location has a more complicated effect, so Tomo decides to investigate further. So, Hibiki tells Mio she's been asked to head back to Limia. Mio's bummed because she wanted to learn more from her, but she totally gets why Hibiki has to go. Hibiki thanks her, saying they wouldn't have made it through the wasteland without her help. Hibiki even invites Mio to come along, but Mio says no. The only thing on her mind right now is Makoto. Meanwhile, Emma shows Makoto the new plants they've been growing, and thanks to Shiki's advice, the harvest has been booming. Makoto is super relieved about not having to worry about food anymore, but he's still concerned about the weather. He's determined to keep growing the population of the demiplane though. Makoto meets up with Elle, who shows him a piece from a monster that got a hero all banged up. It turns out the monster ate a wind spirit, which is seriously rare because monsters don't usually do that. Shiki fesses up that he created the monster as part of an experiment before he met Makoto. He'd been feeding spirits to monsters, hoping they'd turn into something stronger, but never got to see the results. Next up, Makoto meets with representatives from 3 species who are eager to move into the demiplane. He feels a little awkward summoning them instead of visiting them, but Emma says it's totally normal since they're the ones trying to move in. She also nudges Makoto to start acting like the master of the demiplane. They show off their flying skills, which gets Emma a bit annoyed because they seem to be looking down on Makoto. But Makoto's actually impressed. They live in a place even more remote than Tomo's mountain. The Winnin species shares that even though their area is far out, it's packed with resources, and they've been able to protect their village because they're strong fighters. When Makoto tells them they'll be treated the same as everyone else, they get super emotional. Then Makoto meets the Gorgons, who explain that their eyes can turn people to stone. Makoto remembers them as Medusas from his world. They're worried that Makoto might not be able to handle it, but he's like, I got this. They remove their masks, and boom, Makoto's desk turns to stone. It gets a little crazy, but Makoto quickly realizes that the petrification is tricky for them, and even their food turns to stone. They explain that only females exist in their species, and they produce by absorbing energy from males of other species. Makoto's a bit freaked out by this and tells them that if they move into the demiplane, he won't be able to provide any males for them to reproduce with. They're totally fine with this, but are worried that their eyes might cause problems for everyone else. Makoto reassures them that he can make glasses that'll protect others from their petrifying gaze. The Gorgons ask if he's sure about letting them live there, since they can't undo the stone effect once it happens. Makoto's confident though, and when he restores his desk to normal, it stays that way this time. The Gorgons are stoked. They thought they'd have to wear masks forever. Makoto also meets with some fairies, who are trying to leave the place after being caught. However, they explain they're somewhere between fairies and spirits, with the ability to command low-level spirits. Emma's not thrilled about their behavior, but Makoto sees potential in them because they're great at gathering info. He's about to invite them to the demiplane, but Emma worries they might be too much of a hassle at night. Later, Makoto sits down with Tomo and Shiki to talk about the 2 species that passed the interview. Shiki gets to work on glasses for the Gorgons, while Tomo starts drafting a training schedule for the Winnin. Meanwhile, Mio brings in a new dish with mayonnaise, which makes Makoto nostalgic about his old world. Shiki, being the foodie he is, imagines a mayonnaise hot pot. Then, the weather in the demiplane starts changing again, and Tomo's theory about Makoto's mist gates causing it seems spot on. Mio's having trouble storing ingredients because of the climate shifts, and Shiki warns that the demiplane could face storms or droughts at any time. Makoto realizes they need more regular weather, so Tomo decides to look for a place that experiences all types of weather. Makoto gets ready to head back to Rothgard, which makes everyone a little sad, but he promises to return when he has some free time. When he gets back to Rothgard, Aqua and Iris hand him all the shop earnings, and Shiki suggests hiring more people since the business is booming. Makoto gives them bananas as a bonus, and at the academy, Makoto wonders what paperwork they need to turn in for their classes. But Shiki has already taken care of everything. Just then, Bright bursts in and asks Makoto for 10 healing potions, saying they're absolutely amazing. Makoto asks him to come to the shop since they have a lot of new products. He's surprised by all the letters he got while he was away, but Shiki says he'll handle them, so Makoto just wants to see the important stuff. One letter catches his eye. It's an application from 3 students wanting to join his class, and he's shocked when he sees their names. As class begins, Makoto asks the new students to introduce themselves. First up is Shifu, who had been on leave due to illness. She's a powerhouse in attack magic, especially with earth and fire elements, and has the protection of spirits thanks to her earth affinity. Next is her sister, Rembrandt, who is a skilled fighter and uses enhancement magic. Makoto remembers how they were cursed before and is glad to see they fully recovered. The last student is Karen Force, who transferred from another royal academy and specializes in water magic. Makoto hopes they all get along and tells the Rembrandt sisters that even though he's friends with their father, he won't go easy on them. The other students are puzzled by how the sisters are acting and think they're just pretending to be nice. Makoto senses something off, and Shiki explains that the sisters have a bad reputation because they like to brag about their wealth and looks, but Makoto doesn't think they seem like that. Makoto tells the new students to stay put while the rest follow him. He tells them he's going to summon a creature from them to fight, which makes them nervous. He summons a lizard man, but tells him to hold back, only fighting at 20% of his strength and not using his breath attack. Makoto returns to the others and tells them to attack him so he can point out their flaws. They start and Yo fires arrows while the others chant their spells, but the arrows don't even make a dent in Makoto's shield, so he tells Yo to add mana to her shots and focus on strengthening her physical body. Shifu launches a fire blast, and Karen freezes Makoto, but he's completely unaffected. Makoto tells Shifu to focus on casting faster with more intensity, while Karen should work on increasing power and duration instead of speed. Gyona shoots another arrow, but Makoto burns it before it can reach him. He criticizes her sloppy technique, saying she's too focused on power shots, which makes her bow handling careless. He tells her to try using her spear next. He warns them that this loss will stick with them, but it's better to face it now. Meanwhile, the lizard man swings his sword at the students, sending them flying back. Isul uses an incantation to allow everyone to move freely across the land, giving Abelia a chance to fire a fire arrow. The lizard man dodges, but as he's in the air, Jin tries to slash him. However, the lizard man knocks him away. The fight ends and Makoto tells the students to write a report on where they need to improve, but he asks Karen to come with him. The students are feeling down about how easily they were defeated, but Shiki reassures them that Makoto only gives them tough challenges because he believes they can overcome them. He mentions how Makoto has high hopes for them, which isn't why he's tough, and Shiki admits he's a little jealous since it's been a while since Makoto expected much from him. Meanwhile, Makoto talks with Karen about how she's way too strong to be a regular student. She reveals she was a military mage in her kingdom. Makoto already looked into her past but wonders if she's even the real Karen, which makes her laugh. Makoto asks her what the demons want with the academy, and even though she doesn't have horns, hints that something's not quite right. Makoto quickly realizes that Karen is a demon just by her skin color and eyes, but she tries to charm him with a sweet innocent face. Not falling for it, Makoto tells her it won't work. She praises him for seeing through her so fast and reveals that the real Karen is dead, killed by her own allies. She's curious why Makoto isn't angry about her being a demon, and he casually tells her that he doesn't discriminate. He'll let her go if they can come to an agreement. When he asks her real name, she doesn't answer and gets ready to kill him. But just in time, Shiki shows up and exposes her as Rona, one of the demon army's 4 generals. The group heads to Gotetsu, where Rona wants to know all about Makoto's trading company. She knows he has another shop in Ion and wonders if he's working with them, but Makoto assures her they're just neutral. When he asks why she infiltrated the academy, she says not to worry, but Shiki quickly warns him not to let his guard down. Rona suggests they get to know each other better, but Shiki threatens her, saying if she tries to sleep with Makoto, she'll regret it for life. Makoto asks again what she wants at the academy, and she reveals that she's trying to stop the secret humanoid experiments going on in the city. Meanwhile, Lime shows up in Rothgard to help Makoto and is tasked with investigating the human trafficking trade. He soon uncovers the involvement of an assassin guild. Makoto asks Aqua and Eris to help Lime, but they're reluctant about working overtime. However, they change their minds after Makoto offers them more bananas. Shiki warns Makoto to be suspicious of everything Rona says, explaining that she used him in the past and caused him a lot of trouble. Rona owes a huge debt to the Demon King, and although she's not as strong as Mio, she's a lot more cunning. Later, they meet the Rembrandt sisters. Makoto apologizes for not visiting them sooner and congratulates them on their recovery. The sisters notice that he's acting different from his usual self, and he explains that teaching brings out his strict side. They thank him for healing them and offer to help in any way, but Makoto tells them not to worry about it. Lime's investigation takes him to an abandoned building on the academy grounds. Sensing someone nearby, he draws his sword, but the man just smiles at him. Iris and Aqua soon tell Makoto they've lost contact with Lime, and the last place they were able to reach him was near the academy. Shiki starts suspecting that Rona has betrayed them, but Makoto wants to stay cautious and not jump to conclusions just yet. In the dungeon, Lime and Eva are trapped, but Lime apologizes for getting her caught up in this. He explains that when he met the mysterious man, he tried contacting Makoto, but the man blocked his telepathy. Left with no choice, Lime fought back but was defeated. Afterward, Eva tried to help him, but she got caught too. Lime tells her that he works for Makoto but more as a bodyguard. He offers to help her escape, but she points out that their attackers have ties to a powerful organization within the academy, so escaping wouldn't matter much. Lime reassures her, saying the man who defeated him isn't there anymore. He had marked the man during their fight, so he knows where to find them. Eva offers Lime valuable information in exchange for rescuing her and even promises a reward if they take down the organization. Lime reveals a hidden sickle and breaks them both out of their cell. As they make their escape, they're shocked to discover the horrifying experiments being done on humans and demi-humans. Eva suspects the goal is to boost combat and magical abilities, but Lime decides to put everyone who's been experimented on out of their misery by ending their suffering. Meanwhile, Shiki and Makoto investigate the place where Lime disappeared. Shiki senses the presence of a dragon and wonders if this might not be a demon problem after all, since Rona doesn't get along with dragons. Makoto considers whether it could be Lancer and Sophia, which gets Shiki pumped up, eager to avenge Makoto's bow. But just as Shiki gets excited for a fight, Lime shows up, and Shiki's hopes for a battle are dashed. Makoto's eyes widen when he sees Eva and dives into the details of a report about an incident. It sparks his curiosity about the man who defeated Lime. Shiki informs him that Eva has something important to share, and Makoto directs him to meet Rona, hoping to uncover more about the people secretly supporting the organization from within the academy. Eva agrees to give them information, but the reward will only come after they take down the organization. She recalls the time Makoto was looking at a photo of his parents and reveals she knows who they are. His father was a noble, and his mother was a high-ranking priestess. They were supposed to marry in Neon, but had to flee before the wedding. Makoto wonders why they had to leave, but Eva doesn't know since the records were destroyed in a demon invasion 10 years ago. She explains that she and Lyria are from Kilon and barely escaped the invasion, but they were branded cowards for fleeing. They couldn't talk about their families and were harassed for it. At one point, they even considered ending it all, but they chose to reclaim their family's lost lands instead. Eva began investigating the organization, hoping to use them to achieve that goal, but things went sideways when she encountered Lime one night. Makoto starts to think about the power of the organization and whether they could join the war. Just then, he senses someone approaching, and Lime warns him that the man who defeated him is coming. Makoto tells Lime to fetch Shiki, but Lime is confident and ready to fight. Suddenly, Mio and Tomo appear through a magic gate, telling Lime to stand down. The mysterious man arrives and introduces himself as the guild master of the Adventurers Guild. He apologizes for his previous actions towards Lime, surprising Makoto and the others. When they offer him tea, he asks for fruit, which frustrates Mio, but Makoto tells her to fulfill the request. Makoto wonders what the guildmaster is doing here, and the man tells him he knows about Makoto's abilities. Makoto is curious about his identity, but before he can ask more, Tomo reveals that his name is Luto, and he's one of the greater dragons. Luto politely asks Tomo to be respectful, as he wishes to speak with Makoto, but Tomo stands her ground, refusing to let anyone deceive her master. Luto approaches Makoto, and Tomo draws her sword, asking when he became a man. He casually replies he got tired of living as a woman, and a standoff seems inevitable, but Luto clarifies he only wants to talk about the Adventurers Guild. Meanwhile, Rona decides to help with the investigation but warns Shiki not to oppose her methods, as she's already accomplished her original goal. She's eager to see Makoto's true power. Luto then shares that he formed the Adventurers Guild 1,000 years ago, hoping it would spread worldwide and help solve problems in communities. He also created a system where guild members had licenses that showed their levels, a concept inspired by video games from Makoto's world. Tomo asks why he made the guild, and Luto explains it was to keep the humans, who had grown arrogant due to the goddess's blessing, in check. Makoto assumes the guild was meant to encourage human growth, but Luto reveals it's actually about controlling ambition. People join the guild seeking power, but their desires ultimately destroy them, thinning out the population. Luto explains that the highest level in the guild is more than 65,000, a number chosen after his master's romantic speech. Makoto realizes it's the highest number in 16-bit programming and wonders how his master knew about video games if he lived 1,000 years ago. Luto explains that time flows differently in different worlds. Makoto ponders his chances of returning to his old world, and Luto says it's a 1 in 10 million shot with his current mana level. Before Luto leaves, Tomo decides to see him off, still distrustful of him. As they part ways, Tomo asks if it's true that humans from Makoto's world only lived for around 100 years, and Luto replies that only a few of them reached that age. Tomo firmly states that Makoto means everything to her, and if he died, the world wouldn't matter anymore. She wonders if Makoto will ever try to return to his old world, and Luto thinks he won't abandon her but may eventually change, becoming someone who can freely travel between both worlds. Back with Shiki, he remains skeptical of Rona, but Makoto was impressed by her ability to find people connected to the organization. Rona tells Makoto she's leaving the academy as she's accomplished her goals. She'll notify the academy about Karen's death, but Makoto insists she just say she's leaving due to a family emergency. Before she goes, she warns him not to trust Shiki in the forest ogres and gives him an incantation to contact her if he ever wants to work with the demons. Makoto shows the incantation to Tomo and Mio, and Tomo wonders that they can use it to learn more about cursed items that remove the goddess's blessing. Makoto then realizes that even though Lime is human, he can communicate with him normally. Makoto is curious about the Rembrandt sisters' recent behavior and their connection to the organization, so he asks Tomo about it. Tomo explains that she made them part of her family by giving them her blood. While Tomo suggests that they wait to catch someone important from the organization, Makoto insists on solving things quickly since Luna and Eva's safety are at risk. Tomo and Mio want to help, but Makoto refers to handle it on his own. This makes Tomo recall something Luto mentioned. Makoto will change after a specific event. Makoto manages to capture Bright, who threatens him, claiming the organization will make him pay. But Makoto counters, saying that Bright has been abandoned by the organization. Bright explains that many wars have been caused by the goddess, making the rise of organizations like theirs inevitable. He believes the goddess isn't fit to rule, and that humans could survive without her. Makoto is curious about their experiments with demi-humans, and Bright says they're the best test subjects. After hearing enough, Makoto decides it's time to wrap things up at the academy. The students notice how the Rembrandt sisters have been acting friendlier lately. One of them wonders if Bright left because of the sisters. Meanwhile, Isum feels sick after becoming addicted to the magic medicine. The students also talk about Karen leaving the academy and the Rembrandt sisters joining their class to fight the Lizard Man. They're nervous because the Lizard Man is much stronger than them, but they come up with a plan to defeat it. However, when the fight starts, Makoto throws in another Lizard Man, causing their plan to fall apart, and they're quickly defeated again. The students beg Makoto to continue teaching them during the summer break, and Makoto asks the Rembrandt sisters if they want to stay. Their father wants them to return home, but they express their desire to stay and learn from Makoto. Makoto agrees, but only if they go home during the second half of summer break. Meanwhile, Eva offers Makoto a piece of her family's land for protecting her, but Makoto politely declines and asks her to recommend a book instead. The students face the Lizard Man again and finally manage to defeat it, but Shiki tells them to prepare for round 2. The Lizard Man casts a support spell and Jin attacks with his sword. However, the Lizard Man uses his tail to knock him back and freezes everyone else. But could they win just because they're Makoto students? Well, there's so much more to the story. Stay tuned and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so we can keep bringing you more exciting content.